Hi, I'm Emily from the Economics Tutoring Center, and today we're going to go over supply shifters, or the determinants of supply, so reasons why supply may increase or decrease. And remember that before you use any of these particular methods, just check with your specific professor, because different teachers like to use different notations. Alright, so I've already drawn the axis for our graph today, so price on the y-axis and quantity on the x-axis as usual, and we're going to have that negatively sloped demand curve and positively sloped supply curve. So the first thing we're going to look at is if we have a change in the number of sellers, so that's determinant number 1 for us. If we have an increase in the amount of sellers, we're going to have an increase in supply because there's more people selling in the market. Now, an increase in supply is a rightward shift of supply. So if we're on this supply curve, a rightward shift would mean we move right at every point. So our new supply curve, S2, would be here. So S2 would indicate an increase in supply because we had an increased number of sellers. Now let's evaluate equilibrium. So previously, when we were in supply curve 1, before we changed our number of sellers, we were at a price of, let's say, $3 and a quantity of 10. Now when we had that rightward shift of supply, our quantity moved to the right and our price moved down. So let's say we're now at a price of $2 and a quantity of 12. So here we see that an increase in supply, all on its own, will cause a decrease in price and an increase in quantity. And the quantity is very intuitive because if we have more people selling in the market, we're obviously going to have a higher quantity available to us. Alright, so what happens if we had a decrease in supply? I'm going to use the curve S3 for this. So if we have a decrease in supply, we're moving the opposite direction. It's a leftward shift in supply. So a decrease in supply, I'm going to shift marker colors here, would be a leftward shift of supply. I said I was labeling that S3. Remember, we move left at every point. So what happened here when we decreased our number of sellers to our equilibrium? Supply S3 and demand intersected that point. Price moved up to $4 and quantity moved down to 8 units. And again, the quantity is very intuitive. If we have less sellers, we have less goods available, and our equilibrium is going to move down. So our price went up when we decreased supply, which was a leftward shift, and our quantity went down. Alright, so now we're going to move to our second determinant of demand. I've already erased the lines that we were using for number of sellers, but I've recreated our graph. So remember that our original intersection of supply and demand, our original equilibrium, we call it, was at $3 and 10 units. So our second determinant is going to be the cost of prices of inputs. So how does the cost of an input or the price of an input change our supply curve? How does it affect whether or not we increase or decrease supply? Well, inputs are things like wood or gasoline or even human labor, where when we adjust how much each of these costs, it adjusts our ability to create that final good. So if the price of gasoline went up per se, and we were a producer, then that increase in price of gasoline reduces our ability or increases our costs to produce every single good. If the price of gasoline increasing reduces our supply because we're less able to create each unit of the good, we're going to experience a decrease in supply, which was, remember, a leftward shift of supply. So, moving left at each point, we're going to draw in this new supply curve, S2, that's representative of an increase in the prices of goods used in production or goods that are inputs. So an increase in the price of inputs. When we decrease the number of sellers, we also experienced a leftward shift of supply. And what happened there? Well, we had an increase in price and a decrease in quantity. So notice that even though we've changed the kind of determinant we have here, we're still going to experience those same conditions where we have an increase in price for each good and a decrease in quantity. All right, so what happens when we have a decrease in the price of inputs or a decrease in the cost of input? Well, if gasoline has become less expensive, we're going to be able to produce much more or slightly more. The amount of the shift isn't necessarily important here so much as the direction of the shift. So if we are decreasing the price of gasoline, we have increased our ability to produce our final good. And so that's going to cause a rightward shift of supply. So if we are moving our curve rightward, remember this is an increase in supply, we're going to experience a decrease in price and an increase in quantity at equilibrium. So, similarly to when we had an increase in the amount of sellers, decreasing the price of an input caused us to experience a rightward shift of supply, an increase in equilibrium quantity, and a decrease in equilibrium price. Alright, so now we're going to move on to a determinant of supply that some students often find a little bit more difficult, and that determinant would be prices of other goods in the market. So it's easiest if we start off thinking of ourselves or of the market as a farmer. So let's say you produce corn, and this year, all of a sudden, the price of soy has skyrocketed. So when we go to replant our crops, we, as a farmer, are going to want to plant soy instead of corn because that market has increased in price. So that market has become much more profitable, or at least appears to be, and so we have more interest in joining that market. So when we go to plant our seeds for our next crop, we're going to be more likely to plant soy. And if we think about this on a larger scale, many more farmers planting soy instead of whatever they were doing, we're going to experience an increase in the supply of soy. So, moving right, because an increase is always associated with a rightward shift, we have an increase in supply, which, as we've learned, is correlated with an increase in quantity and a decrease in price. Because as more sellers enter, we have more of the good available and it's becoming less expensive. So this then, when we showed our increase in supply, was an increase in supply in the soy market. So now I'm going to draw another graph that's going to exemplify or display the changes of supply in the corn market. So if I go ahead and draw my original supply and demand, again just saying that our original equilibrium was at $3.10 units, so quantity and price. Again, what did we say that we're experiencing in the corn market? Well, if we left, or we exited the corn market to enter the soy market, we're going to experience that opposite shift in the corn market. So as we leave, we, and assuming that many others also left the corn market for soy, experience a decrease in the supply of corn, which was a leftward shift again. So then what happened to our equilibrium price and quantity. Increase in price and a decrease in quantity. So we can see here that in the soy market, an increase in quantity, decrease in price, and here in the corn market, decrease in quantity and an increase in price. So I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you need any more assistance, we're always here in the Economics Tutoring Center during the school year in the BA building. I'm Emily, and this was Determinants of Supply.